Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing the next video in my palette roulette series in which I pick a palette that's in my collection that might also be in your collection. I utilize it for a few weeks and then I come back to you and I give you my review on the palette. We go through some live swatches, we talk about my experiences with the palette, I show you some pictures of the eye looks I was able to create, and I just really give you, my idea of a thorough review. It doesn't necessarily have to be a brand new palette on the market. This truly is about getting some use and getting real familiar with some of the products that I have in my collection, specifically when it comes to palettes, as I have, close to 200 palettes in my collection, and none of them get the love that they deserve, but I want to make sure that I have touched every single one at the end of the day in my palette collection. So with that said, if that sounds like something you're interested in, today we're going to be going over the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette. This is a relatively new palette on the market as opposed to some of the other palette roulette videos that I've done here on this channel. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please keep on watching. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high-end, colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a field leader for Ulta Beauty. I get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring you that education here on this channel, but ultimately I'm just out here talking about makeup because I like to talk about makeup. And I'm assuming if you're here, you probably also like to talk about makeup. So let's just jump in. Let's just talk about makeup. All right, today we are doing the review for the Too Faced Italian Spritz palette. I did receive this palette in gratis at FLC this last year, so I received it in April, and I do think it launched in March. This palette is a $54 eyeshadow palette, and it has 0.63 ounces of product in it, or 0.035 ounces per pan, or 0.04 ounces per pan if you want to go that far. I was only able to find 2 different star ratings for it. One on Ulta Beauty for 4.3 stars that has 27 reviews, and one at Too Faced for 5.0 stars with only 5 reviews. So it doesn't surprise me that Too Faced has a 5-star rating on it with only 5 reviews. And that's not a whole lot of people to pick from as far as a star rating goes. And I would have to say that, I was actually kind of surprised by this palette. This is the Italian Spritz palette box. So it's really cute. It does have like 2 wine glasses over here. It says Italian Spritz. It says Too Faced. It's got this really pinky, peachy like motif going on it, and then the back of the palette looks like this. And over here it has information on the palette as well as down towards the bottom, and then up here it does show you the shades that are in the palette. So if you're in a place where you can't see the shades in the palette, which I don't know where you would be that had that, because it is, out for touch and feel and all the things for, tester purposes at Ulta. If there was not a tester out, you would still be able to see what the shadows in the palette look like. This is considered conscious beauty at Ulta Beauty, and they have like a plethora of like pinpoints that you have to meet the criteria of to be considered conscious beauty. It is also cruelty free. I do believe it's also gluten free. I do not see on it like the, the little eyeglass makeup like container that tells you the shelf life on it. I don't see a shelf life on this for whatever reason. Maybe it just lasts forever. Who knows? I don't see it anywhere, not on the packaging, not on the cartridge, but this is what the actual palette looks like, and it is the tin packaging that is Too Faced of old, right? It's got Italian Spritz over here, and it is raised in the tin, and then it's got the 2 like Spritz cups over there. It's got the same theme going on the actual palette as what is on the box. On the back of the palette, that is where the difference comes in from like the cartridge versus the palette. It doesn't have the color story on the back of the palette, but it still has the information on the palette and the name of the palette. And the back is smooth. There is no raised or indents to it. I'm hoping that this is recording because I've had some serious issues with my videos recording lately, which is why you guys didn't see a video on Friday, because I recorded all day and none of them actually recorded. That was fantastic. So when you open it up, it does have a mirror. It has the cute little Italian spritz guy over here. The mirror is, you know, a decent mirror. It's a nice mirror and it's really good to use when you know, maybe are going out of town and you need it to use for a vanity purpose. It does have a scent to it. I think it's kind of floral peachy. It reminds me a lot of the Too Faced Peach, Perfect Peach, the Peach palette by Too Faced, though I have that palette and I love that palette. And on the inside, it kind of quasi reminds me of that palette as well, not just in the scent, but also in the shades. So the shades are going to be very peachy, very summery, I really don't know how to describe them, because while I do feel like this has a nice, decent, like summer feel to it, I also think that it's just kind of a bunch of shadows thrown into tin packaging. This does have 18 shades in it, 10 of which are matte, 8 are shimmers, and there is one, this one here, is kind of like this like special shade. So says Too Faced. Launched in March of 2023. I think it's kind of got this like fruity smell to it. Like I said, a little bit peachy, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad color story. I just don't know that the color story makes sense. If you look at this in the same way that I would look at like a Natasha Denona palette or something like that, where, you know, color stories across or in quads, that makes it make a little bit more sense than what I feel like it makes when you are just looking at this palette overall. Does it say Italian Spritz to me? Well, I don't know because I've never had an Italian Spritz. So I don't even know what that is. Is it an alcoholic beverage? Is it just a fruity beverage? Smells like fruit. Smells like peaches. So maybe it's a fruity beverage? I don't know. I don't know what an Italian Spritz looks like. So I don't know if this makes any sense for Italian Spritz. I do think that it feels summery, and I do feel like it has a beautiful color story, but I'm not 100% sure that this is reminiscent to its, you know, its title, its namesake. I love that this is in the old school tin packaging, and what I also love about this is that this one is made in Italy, which meant to me right off the bat that it should have a better formula in it than what I've experienced in a lot of Too Faced palettes. I'll be 100% honest with you, I do have some Too Faced palettes in my collection, but I'm not a huge Too Faced fan. When Too Faced launches something, I usually skim right over the top of it because I just can't care. Because 9 times out of 10, I've experienced really bad experiences with Too Faced. So I have Too Faced in my collection, but it's just not much, and I don't go out of my way to find it. I actually was going to give this palette away because I don't love Too Faced all that much. I'm really glad I held on to it, and really glad I decided to try it myself. The formulas in this felt a lot better than any formula that I have ever had on my eyes from Too Faced in the past. Even previous formulations in this tin packaging. I would say that this is probably better than any of the cardboard packaging that they've been doing as of late, but I also feel like it's better than any of the tin packaging of the past. The mattes in this palette were effortless. They blended so easily. They also built onto themselves really well, and they didn't seem to get patchy or muddy or void when you built on top of it. I would say they were rich and they were super opaque, and I think that, you know, specifically like this this shade here and this shade here are both in my eye look today. And the fact that you can see both of those shadows, well, I will say that this mustard yellow gave me, or this like berry mixed with this mustard yellow gave me a little run for my money. This is the second time I've put this eye look on my face today. I still feel like it came out really well. I feel like it looks beautiful. I feel like there's not a lot, there's no muddiness to it. There's no patchiness to it. It built really, really well with each other. But that being said, none of the mattes in this palette felt like they were getting patchy, or I didn't have a hard time blending any of them, to be honest. The shimmers in this palette felt really buttery soft, a lot more soft than I've felt of Too Faced shimmers in the past. Most of the time, Too Faced shimmers have a lot of grippiness to them in really big chunks, glitters, and I didn't feel that way with these. These are more shiny or glossy than they are glittery, which could be, you know, a downfall for some people that really want that wham bam like glitter moment. I don't really much care as long as the shimmer stays on my eye and it doesn't travel everywhere and it doesn't crease and it doesn't exacerbate texture and it's pretty and impactful. I felt that these shadows were pretty and impactful. I think the worst one in this palette is probably this one here because it's so beautiful in the packaging. I just wanted it to show up that beautiful on my eye, and I just don't feel like it did. It was kind of a hem-ha moment with this one, but I think that they're all like super glossy and really pretty on the eye and definitely have an impact. I also feel like they're super pigmented, really easy to spread, definitely better with your finger than with a brush, but still really easy to spread out. And they didn't travel or crease, which was fantastic. I also felt like they didn't fall out as much as I have seen with Too Faced in the past. Like, they weren't super chunky, therefore they didn't fall out all over my face as I was applying them or throughout the day. I did see a slight amount of fallout when using this palette, but truly nothing. And it all just kind of swept away at the end of the day anyways. I didn't have any struggles with fallout. I would say these are definitely best with a primer, although I do feel like they blended well and they lasted just as long without a primer. I feel like the opacity stayed a little bit longer. The fade didn't happen as quickly with a primer as it did without a primer, but I do feel like it performed the exact same with or without a primer for sure. And the amount of, you know, impact was still there whether you had a primer or not. I don't feel like this is a palette that you need to have like a special white primer for. All of these shadows are pretty pigmented, really rich, very, very opaque on application for the most part. I do feel like the shimmers, especially this one, which was kind of a ho-hum one for me, and this one, which is more sheer-ish, showed up much better, of course, with a glitter primer. So I would say for those two shades specifically, maybe go with a glitter primer. And this shade here is supposed to be like some special, I don't know, some special shade of some sort. And I really didn't feel like it was all that special. It's listed as a, did I write it down? Gunmetal black with pearl swirl metallics. I don't know. It was the weirdest description of a shadow in my humble opinion, but it also, it wasn't much. Like, I didn't love that shadow. I did not love that shadow, but I didn't love it either. It's not like special enough that it is what you should go after when thinking about purchasing this palette. Bottom line is 4.3 stars at Ulta Beauty, 5 stars at Too Faced. I would say it should probably land, if I were to rate it, it would probably land in that 4.5, 4.6 because it is a really good palette. And that's saying a lot because I don't love Too Faced. I've not really had great experiences with Too Faced. We've got the iconic palettes of theirs, right? So I have the chocolate gold. I will probably never let that go. I do feel like these shimmers are better than the ones in the chocolate gold because they're less grippy, less chalky, or less chunky, and more shiny, so to speak, less texture exacerbating, to be honest. And we also have the Sweet Peach palette, which I couldn't think of the name 5 minutes ago. I don't know why I could think of it just off the top of my head now, but I think a lot of these shadows remind me of the shadows in the Sweet Peach palette. So is this Sweet Peach 2.0? No, but I do think it's similar enough that if you have it and you have some pops of these colors that are also in it, the difference is the pops of colors. Right, the pops of colors in this one are a lot more bright and vivid, and the pops of colors in the Sweet Peach are a little more deep and like peachy inner core. Look at like Thinking James and the Giant Peach kind of moments. So there's that. And then I also had, and that was the first like collection I had ever purchased, so I probably will own that palette for my whole life. But I also think that it's a good palette. Both of those are in tin packaging. And then I have the Too Faced Natural Nudes palette, or not Natural Nudes. What is it? Better Than Sex Natural, or Born This Way Natural Nudes palette, right? I can't remember. Anyways, I felt like that was a really great palette. But I also felt like that it had a very different formula than what I had seen in most of the other tin packaging. And I know some of the other tin packaging palettes are like made in the USA or the Dominican Republic, if I remember correctly. And this one is made in Italy. So that might be the difference of the, I mean, Natasha Denona is made in Italy. So are these Natasha Denona quality? Absolutely not. Would I pay $54 for this out of my own pocket? Probably not. I do think it's worth the half price marker that would be on this when it goes on sale, but I'm not sure that I would pay $54 for it, but I do think that it's a great palette. So with that said, I did get some really great eye looks out of this palette. I do happen to think that today's is my favorite, and sometimes that happens that way, but I did get some really pretty eye looks out of this palette. Again, some of the duds for me were this shade here, just because it looks super vibrant in the palette, and I don't feel like it shows up that way on your face. I also didn't think that this was as special as they thought it was. And the yellow, the mustard yellow matte over here, I did have some problems with it blending with this purple, but that's probably because yellow and purple don't really mix well together. So the second time I went in differently and it went fine. So yeah, let's look at some swatches. So I'm just gonna go across the palette, across and across. I will say that each one of the shadows in this palette are super buttery soft. Like, you don't feel the grippiness in them like you feel in some other, you know, matte shadows or even shimmer shadows within the Too Faced line. So first we have Holy Cannoli. Holy Cannoli is a really salmony pink matte, like very light peachy salmon matte. And then we have, this is Ciao Bellini. Ciao Bellini is a peachy golden shimmer shadow. Then we have When in Rome. When in Rome is a watermelon pink matte. Then we have Take Me to Church, which is a beautiful rose gold. And that one is a shimmer. Then we have Feeling Saucy. Feeling Saucy is a deep terracotta matte. Okay, then we have the one that was, you know, a disappointment for me in this, and it is called Lake Como. So Lake Como is supposed to be like a blue silver shimmer. While I do think that it's swatched super well, I think in an eye look, it's just very meh, very ho-hum. I think a lot of the reason for that is because it's just shiny, it's not sparkly, so you don't see a whole lot of that like transition that could happen in the shadow like what you see in the pan. So there's a little bit of sky blue brightness, like silverish brightness in the pan, and you don't see that on your eye when you put it into an eye look because just a shiny, glossy shadow. Is it impactful? I would even venture to say that I don't think that it's an impactful shadow as far as the shine and the gloss goes, because the other shadows in this palette, the other shimmers in this palette, outshined that shadow. I was really excited for that shadow. I love a blue shiny lid, but that one didn't work out so hot. The next one is Toasted in Tuscany. Toasted in Tuscany is just a soft brown matte, a really good like transitions shade, a really good like just all over your eye shade, one that's really good for also contouring an eye look. If you just want a one and done kind of look, you could put this all over, deepen it up into the crease a little bit. Then we have Sin Sin, which is a warm bronze. I specifically loved this as a one and done like shadow all over the lid. Beautiful, beautiful warm bronze shimmer. And then we have Spritz and Glitz. Spritz and Glitz is that purple there again. Not really, you guys, this is the other one that I was saying is it wasn't super impactful in an eye look. I think that it's pretty, and I think that it you could pack it on and get a little bit more opacity to it, but it felt more like a topper than it felt like an opaque shadow, but really pretty on the lid. Loved it on the inner corner. And then we have Spaghetti About It. Oh, like Forget About It. Okay, Spaghetti About It. And Spaghetti About It is a deeper salmon matte than this one here. So I think you're seeing also what we have noted about Too Faced in the past is that they're kind of like this one trick pony of colors, right? There's not a whole lot in their menagerie of eyeshadow palettes that differ from one from the other. You could probably take shadows from one palette and plunk it into another palette and strategically place them and make it look like the new palette all over again, because their shadows kind of, there isn't a whole lot of differences. Where I would say that this one really stuck out as a different palette are those shadows like this blue one and that purple one, which aren't very good. So that might be why they stick to the same color stories. The next one we have is Grappa Don't Peach, which is just a gold shimmer. And y'all know how I feel about golds, so this wasn't my favorite to use, but it is a pretty shimmer. And then we have Espresso Yourself. So Espresso Yourself is a cool brown matte. It's definitely got a little bit of a coolness to it. It's also got a little bit of a ruddiness to it, so it can look a little bit red, especially paired with some of the more oranges in here, or even this purple that's on my eye look today. Last row, this one here was one of my favorites. This is probably the best shimmer in this palette. It is called Lake and Bake, and it is a midnight blue metallic. It is so pretty. It's also one of the only ones that feels kind of quasi different in the pan than the others. It still is, you know, creamy and still has that creamy feel and doesn't at all feel like sandpapery, but it does have a little bit more catch to it than the other shadows do. Then we have Capri Fun. Capri Fun is the like mustard yellow matte that I told you is in my eye look today that gave me a little bit of trouble. This, on the website, they call this a muted pumpkin matte, and I could say that it's a muted pumpkin matte. It definitely is pretty, and I think it went with all the things in this palette. I loved this shadow specifically, but it is the one that gave me the most problems. And then I have this one, which just goes on like butter, and it is called Mamma Mia. It is a wine matte, my favorite in the palette to use. Then we have Como After Dark. Como After Dark is the one that is supposed to be the special shade, and it is considered a gunmetal pearl metallic of sorts. This one felt kind of like a Super Shock, to be honest, but a little less shocky, like a little less spongy than a Super Shock, but I don't really feel like it's anything special. I could take this shadow or leave it. One thing that I will also say about this one is this one spread a lot more easily than some of the other shimmers do, but this one also therefore spread a lot more easily than some of the other shimmers did. The more you use, the more it tended to move around. And then we have Impostable. And Impostable is a mustard brown. So while we have the mustard yellow up here, this one is a mustard leans more brown. And then we have Gelato. And Gelato is a cream matte. And I mean, look at how beautiful that cream matte is. Look at how stark it is. I loved that cream colored matte because it went into almost every eye look, either in my brow bone, my inner corner, or both. And today it is the shadow that is all over the lid in this eye look, blended into that like wine color. And I loved that cream. I am a sucker for a good like creamy cream colored eyeshadow, and I feel like that one was a really good one. It took me next to no effort to get these shadows swatched out for you. The one that I had to go in for a second time was this one, and it was because it didn't go all the way down my arm, but it was like literally didn't take me anything to blend it out. I just think it's a really good palette. I think that Too Faced did a really good job with this palette, and whether it's got to do with whether Jared Blandino is there or not, I have no idea, but it is a palette that I'm really super excited that I kept because I was going to get rid of it. With that said, I would definitely say that this is one that if you don't have these colors or you're willing to give Too Faced another try, this is a good palette to pick up. I'm excited for what they'll come out with in the future, but I'm also like, tentatively not going to pick anything up because Too Faced has done me dirty a couple of times. With that said, let's go pick another palette. Okay, so my drawer over there is full of all kinds of palettes that I just want to put on my face. And I keep passing over a couple of them because there's 2 Natasha Denona palettes in there that I've already done a video on, but it wasn't a palette roulette video on. And I keep passing them over because I've already touched them and felt of them and used them and whatnot. One of them is Retro Glam and the other one is My Dream. And, I just went over and looked at the Retro Glam one and it isn't as touched as I thought it was, but that's okay. I have a plan in place for that one, but I'm going to pull these in because I feel like we're going into fall. This is a good time to pull them. And I am really excited about this palette by Natasha Denona. It is the Yucca palette. And it looks like these very, very greens, very kind of browns and muted and very fall. And I am a fall lover. I love fall. But I also know myself and I know that I'm going to get bored probably with these super fast, even though I don't typically get bored with Natasha Denona all that much. I feel like there's a lot of variety in here, but I also want a smidge bit more variety, so we are bringing in this. I do feel like these are kind of very different color stories and might pose some problems if I'm trying to like work them into eye looks together, but I'm up for the challenge. So these are the 2 that I'm bringing in. One is fairly new, Natasha Denona Yucca, although this is old news because she has a new one out that I will be picking up next month. One that's kind of old. This is the Huda Beauty Love Fest palette. And this has been on my list for a long, long time. I mean, really since it came out, I'm really interested in like getting my hands into like some of these like more shiny shades. I heard that this was one of her better Obsessions palettes, and I have an Obsessions palette obsession, so I'm excited to try them. These are the palettes I'll be coming at you with, and probably it'll be at least 3 weeks prior to me reviewing these, and then we'll go from there. So I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, I hope that you give it a big thumbs up. I also hope that you enjoyed it or me enough that you're considering subscribing before you go. Would love to have you along for this, crazy life of mine, and, make friends down in the comments section. Hit me up down there. I still am interacting with every single one of the comments that is made. I'm still typically going in and, commenting back. I would love to have a conversation with you guys down there. Thank you guys so much again just for coming in and spending some time with me today. I hope that you and yours are well, that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best you can. And I hope that you are all loving each other, but loving each other from afar. So until next time. Bye, friends.